In this video, you'll learn how to render dashboard thumbnails in Reveal with .NET Core. This is particularly useful when you want to deliver experiences to customers like selecting a dashboard and you want it to be more than a simple list or dropdown. In this video, we'll create API endpoints to retrieve all the dashboard names using built-in Reveal functions and the Reveal SDK DOM library. And then we'll use a built-in Reveal function to retrieve the information necessary to build out the thumbnail. Using dashboard thumbnails, you can really elevate what you deliver in your application to customers. For example, in this sample, I have my dashboard thumbnails in a list on the right-hand side. If I select one of the dashboards, I go right into the dashboard view. I've also added an expander to my application that lets users select the dashboards that they want to view. This is a little bit nicer than just having a drop-down list or just a text list. I have some additional metadata here, like when the dashboard was created or when it was generated. Ultimately, the goal is to deliver an amazing experience with Reveal to drive data-driven decision-making in your user base. First, we'll create a .NET Core application with the server APIs needed to pull the data from the server down to the HTML client. We'll add some code to a basic HTML page, which will then render our thumbnails. Let's get started. I've created a Visual Studio project targeting an ASP.NET Core project template. The first thing I'm going to do is right-click on my project, select Manage NuGet Packages, go over to Browse and type in reveal.sdk and hit the Enter key. I need the .NET Core library from Reveal, so I'll go ahead and install that. And then next, I need the Reveal SDK DOM library. Make sure to check Include Pre-Release, as this is technically still in beta. So let's install that. And now I have the two libraries necessary to generate my Reveal thumbnails. If we drill into dependencies, packages, we'll see that our SDK DOM and our SDK ASP.NET Core have been installed. In Program CS, let's remove some of the boilerplate code included in the .NET Core project. At the top, we'll add our using statements, which are required. So we need to use the SDK and then the SDK DOM in this application. After we call create builder, we'll add controllers to the builder. So we'll do a builder.services.add controllers. And this will ensure all of the necessary dependencies are registered for routing, etc. Since we're going to be doing local development and we're going to be navigating to this application from a local index.html file, we need to add a CORS policy. The easiest thing to do when you're doing this locally is just allow any origin, any header, any method. Obviously, you want to enable this for development, not when you deploy to your production application. And immediately after we call builder.build, we'll tell the app to use CORS, and the policy that we want to use is allow all, which we had just added. At this point, if we navigate to this ASP.NET Core app from a local application, be it index.html or Angular, React, it doesn't matter, we will have access to the APIs in this app. To finish adding the middleware requirements, we'll call use authorization. And once that's added, we'll add a public class called dashboard names, which we'll use in one of our API calls. You can add this to a separate file, but for the purposes of this example, we'll just make it simple and add it right directly into program.cs. Next, we'll add the two APIs that are required to pull in the dashboard names and the thumbnail. The first API is going to be called dashboards/names. What we're doing here is getting the default folder, which includes the dashboard files that we want to pull down to the client. We haven't actually created this folder yet, so we can right-click, add new folder, simply call it dashboards. In the documentation, there's a link to download sample dashboard folders, which I've already done. So I will right-click, add existing item, go to my desktop. I have dashboards, and I'll add some sample dashboards. So now we will find the dashboards folder, we'll get the files from that folder, and then we're going to loop through those files And for each file, we are going to call the r-document.load to pull in the title. So there's a difference between the file name, which is in this case healthcare.r- or telecom.r-, and then the dashboard title, which could be healthcare analysis or telecom customer satisfaction or sales details. So you always want to pull in the file name to get the thumbnail, but then the title to display the friendly name to the user. And that's really all we're going to do. It's a simple get API to pull in the dashboard names. And then we'll add a second API to get the dashboard thumbnail. So we're going to get all of the names, and then we're going to pass each name in to pull in the thumbnail data. There is an API in the Reveal SDK called getInfoAsync off the dashboard object, and it returns a JSON which gives all of the information to the client to render the dashboard. At this point, the server is done. If we hit run, we'll get our Swagger file, and you can see we have our Reveal thumbnail demo endpoints. So the first thing is we can try out getting all of the dashboard names, and you can see we have the file name and the title coming back. And if we grab one of these file names like healthcare, for example, and we'll try to get the dashboard thumbnail info for it, we'll paste in healthcare, execute, and you can see this is the JSON necessary to render the thumbnail on the client. So the next step is we will leave this running. The critical information here is the endpoint. Localhost 7122 is our Reveal server. So let's go ahead and build out our client application to render the dashboard. In my index.html on the client, I'll add some script dependencies and some CSS into this empty page. So the first thing that I want to add is a reference to jQuery, and then a reference to the Infragistics Reveal JavaScript library, which is on our CDN. Next, we'll add a style tag, which includes a reference to the Roboto fonts from Google, which is the default font for Reveal, so we can have a nice view when we render this into our thumbnail container. The thumbnail container is where the thumbnail dashboard item and the dashboard thumbnail will live. So we're going to create these dynamically based on the information that we're pulling back from our HTTP gets on the server. We'll render that container in the body in the thumbnail container div. All that's left now is to construct the JavaScript that will call our APIs. So after our style tag, we'll add another script tag, and on the document onReady function, I'm going to set a simple variable which points to our Swagger endpoint, which is the server running Reveal. We're going to iterate on the dashboard names that we pull back from the server. So in this case, we're pulling in the base URL, which is localhost 7122, and we're going to pull in the names, which includes the file name and the dashboard title of all the dashboards that we have in our dashboards folder on the server. Once we pull in those names, we are going to dynamically construct a div which will include the dashboard item and the dashboard thumbnail. And then we'll append that to our dashboard container, which is the main div that we're going to render into our thumbnail container. Once we do that, we need to pull in the thumbnail information from the server, which is just a call to our dashboard file name /thumbnail endpoint, which uses the Reveal dashboard thumbnail view function, which is part of the Reveal SDK, to generate the actual thumbnail. And that's all we need to do to render a thumbnail on the client using the .NET Core server that we set up. So we'll clean this up a little bit. We'll save it. We can right click, view this in the browser, and we'll see our thumbnails render in our container. If I right click, we'll go to inspect, pull this over, and we will look at the console, and we can see that we have the object information with all of the dashboard data that's coming down, which includes all of the visualization information to render the thumbnail preview. So in a few minutes with a few lines of code, you now know how to use the Reveal dashboard thumbnail in your application to deliver new and exciting experiences to your users.